This is the story of how professional golf's civil war has reached a stalemate that even its biggest stars believe is unbreakable. Late November 2024 brought statements from both Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau, two players on opposite sides of golf's great divide, saying the same thing: a deal to reunify the sport isn't happening anytime soon. 18 months earlier, the entire golf world thought peace was imminent. The PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund announced a landmark agreement on the 6th of June 2023 that was supposed to end the war. Lawsuits got dropped, a new entity would merge LIV Golf with the established tours, and everyone had a target date for the final deal, the 31st of December 2023. That deadline came and went. Now, heading into 2026, the people closest to the situation are telling us it's never going to happen. Rory McIlroy spoke at the CNBC CEO Council Forum in late November 2024 with the kind of resignation you don't usually hear from him. This was the guy who spent years as the loudest voice defending the PGA Tour when LIV first launched in 2022. And here's what he said. "I think for golf in general, it would be better if there was unification, but I just think with what's happened over the last few years, it's just going to be very difficult to be able to do that." Notice the phrasing there. Not "it'll take time" or "we're working on it." Just very difficult. From someone who spent years arguing passionately about the future of the sport, McIlroy went further and characterized the people backing LIV as acting, in some ways, irrationally, just in terms of the capital they were allocating and the money they were spending. He put numbers on it, stating that LIV has spent $5 or $6 billion US dollars and will need to spend another $5 or $6 billion just to maintain their current position. 4 or 5 years without a return on investment, he noted. And many players' contracts are coming up for renewal. This wasn't criticism from an enemy. What you're hearing is an assessment from someone who understands the business reality. The Saudis are willing to lose money indefinitely, and that changes everything about how negotiations work. Bryson DeChambeau spoke from the other side around the same time in a Fox News interview. His words: "Man, I wish something major would happen, but I don't think it's going to in the immediate future. I think there are too many wants on both sides and not enough gives on the other. We're just too far apart on a lot of things." When the guy who represents LIV's most successful American player is saying both sides want too much and won't give enough, you know the situation is genuinely stuck. The beginning of this mess dates back to June 2022, when LIV Golf launched with backing from Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, a sovereign wealth fund estimated to be worth over $1.15 trillion. Contracts dwarfed anything in golf history, with Jon Rahm's deal reportedly worth over $300 million and nearly $1.4 billion in prize money paid out between 2022 and 2024. The message was clear: we have infinite money, and we're going to reshape professional golf whether you like it or not. The PGA Tour fought back. Rory McIlroy became the spokesman for the establishment, arguing that LIV was bad for the sport and that players who left were selling out. Lawsuits flew in both directions. The conflict turned bitter and personal, and very public. And that's when everything changed on the 6th of June 2023. The framework agreement got announced, dated the 30th of May 2023, meaning it had been signed a week before anyone knew about it. This 5-page document outlined a plan to combine all of PIF's golf-related commercial businesses, including LIV Golf, with the PGA Tour and DP World Tour into a new for-profit entity. The structure looked like this. The Saudi PIF would invest $3 billion into this new entity, but the PGA Tour would control it. PIF Governor Yasir Al-Rumayyan would serve as chairman of the board, with PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan as CEO. A compromise that gave the Saudis a seat at the table but kept operational control with the PGA Tour. Players on both tours felt blindsided. The golf world was stunned. But the framework was signed, the lawsuits were dropped, and there was a deadline, the 31st of December 2023. That deadline passed without a definitive agreement. May 2024 brought a resignation that told everyone how bad things really were. Jimmy Dunn, one of the architects of the June 6 agreement, resigned from the PGA Tour Policy Board and wrote that no meaningful progress has been made towards a transaction with PIF. That's a damning statement from an insider who helped create the framework in the first place. By late 2024, reports indicated that talks between the PGA Tour and PIF had completely stopped, with little indication that fresh discussions were on anyone's radar. But here's the thing. While negotiations stalled, both sides found other paths forward. The PGA Tour made a move in January 2024 that changed the entire dynamic. Strategic Sports Group, or SSG, became the tour's new partner that month. This consortium, led by Fenway Sports Group and including owners like Arthur Blank of the Atlanta Falcons, Stephen Cohen of the New York Mets, and Mark Lazary of the Milwaukee Bucks, invested an initial $1.5 billion into a new entity called PGA Tour Enterprises. The deal provided for up to $3 billion total investment and valued PGA Tour enterprises at $12.3 billion. Nearly 200 PGA Tour members received access to more than $1.5 billion as equity owners in PGA Tour enterprises. Players weren't just employees anymore, they were owners with a stake in the business. This fundamentally changed the calculus. The PGA Tour no longer desperately needed Saudi money. They had American investors and a path to profitability, and their players had equity that could grow in value. The tour had weathered the storm. Meanwhile, the financial reality of LIV Golf was becoming impossible to ignore. LIV Golf Limited. The UK-based firm running LIV's non-US operations has to file public financial reports, and we know the numbers. In 2024, they reported losses totaling $461.8 million, with revenue at $64.9 million, but expenses at $526.7 million. Those losses came after nearly $396 million lost in 2023 and $244 million in 2022. Just the international operations of LIV Golf have lost more than $1.1 billion since 2021, and the actual total investment from the Public Investment Fund into operating the golf tour is believed to be nearly $5 billion when you include the US. Operations we don't have public records for. Accounts from December 2024 stated that directors felt there was a material uncertainty which might cast significant doubt over the company's ability to continue as a financially stable company without continued PIF investment. The filing disclosed that the company received a letter of support from the PIF for 2025. LIV Golf officially acknowledged they cannot survive without the Saudis continuing to pour money into the operation. This isn't speculation, it's in their legal filings. This is what Rory McIlroy was talking about when he described their approach as irrational. From a business perspective, LIV makes no sense because they lose hundreds of millions of dollars every year, have limited television distribution, and have fewer sponsors than the PGA Tour. By every traditional business metric, they should not exist. But they do exist because the Saudis have a $1.15 trillion sovereign wealth fund and are willing to spend whatever it takes. The human element makes this deal even more difficult. The players themselves and their contracts. Contracts for players like Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, and Brooks Koepka are set to expire in a year or two, and as McIlroy pointed out, these players are going to demand similar or higher compensation when those contracts come up for renewal. LIV will need to spend billions more just to keep the players they already have, let alone attract new ones. Something interesting happened over the past 2 years, though. The PGA Tour increased its purses dramatically in response to LIV and created signature events with $20 million prize funds. Rory McIlroy admitted in February 2024 at the Genesis Invitational, "Whether you stayed on the PGA Tour or you left, we have all benefited from this." I've been on the record saying this a lot. We're playing for a $20 million prize fund this week. That would have never happened if LIV hadn't come around. This was a remarkable statement from McIlroy, who had been LIV's most prominent critic. He continued, "I think everyone's just got to get over it, and we all have to say, okay, this is the starting point, and we move forward. We don't look behind us. We don't look to the past. Whatever's happened has happened, and it's been unfortunate. But reunification, how we all come back together and move forward, that's the best thing for everyone." February 2024 showed McIlroy evolving from opposition to pragmatism. He recognized that both sides had changed because of the competition, and that maybe it was time to move on. But that optimism had faded into pessimism by late November 2024. What changed in those 9 months? Part of it is the complete lack of progress on any deal. But there's also the complexity of what a deal would actually look like at this point. Both tours have spent the last 2 years building separate ecosystems. The PGA Tour has PGA Tour enterprises with nearly 200 player owners who have equity stakes, while LIV has players on guaranteed contracts with no equity. Traditional schedule with cuts and stroke play on one side, team format with 54 holes and no cuts on the other. The PGA Tour has non-profit status as a 501(c) organization alongside its for-profit entity. LIV is entirely backed by a foreign sovereign wealth fund. How do you merge that? Do PGA Tour players give up equity to accommodate LIV players? Do LIV players forfeit their guaranteed contracts? Does the team format continue? What happens to the nonprofit structure? Who controls the combined entity? These aren't simple questions with obvious answers. Bryson DeChambeau put it plainly, there are too many wants on both sides and not enough gives. Leadership changes on both sides add another layer of uncertainty. January 2025 brought Scott O'Neill as LIV's new CEO, replacing Greg Norman. O'Neill is an American and longtime sports business executive. Almost simultaneously, the PGA Tour hired Brian Rolapp, a longtime NFL executive who had been with the league since 2003, as their new CEO in mid-2025. O'Neill and Rolap attended Harvard Business School together and are friends. O'Neill revealed that they've had discussions and share a common view on what the landscape of golf should be over the next several years. On paper, that sounds promising. Two friends who understand each other running the two competing organizations. But when Rolap was asked about LIV, he said it's a complex situation that's probably something I should learn more about before I speak, and acknowledged he is not close enough to any of those discussions. That doesn't sound like someone walking into active negotiations. That sounds like someone inheriting a problem that's been set aside. One place where the division hasn't mattered is the major championships. Both McIlroy and DeChambeau, along with others on both sides, note that major championships have been enhanced because they're the only events where PGA Tour and LIV players compete together. 12 LIV Golf players competed in the Masters in April 2025, including 7 former champions, and the majors have felt bigger and more meaningful because they're the only time all the best players are in the same field. From a certain perspective, this is the worst outcome for anyone hoping for reunification. Golf has found a way to function while divided, with the majors providing the tentpole events everyone cares about, the PGA Tour having sustainability and player equity, and LIV having infinite funding from Saudi Arabia. Neither side is in crisis, and when neither side is in crisis, there's no urgency to compromise. McIlroy acknowledged this dynamic when he said, "I didn't feel that way initially because of the fracture. It wasn't good for the game, it wasn't good for the overall game. It wasn't good for either tour, I didn't think. I think we're both sort of like, this has been great for the major championships. We all get together at the major championships, and that's been a really good thing. But for both tours, it's unsustainable." But here's the contradiction in that statement. If LIV has the backing of $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund that's willing to lose billions indefinitely, how is it unsustainable? And if the PGA Tour has billionaire investors and player equity with a valuation of over $12 billion, how is that unsustainable? The answer is that both can sustain themselves for a very long time, long enough that the window for reunification might close permanently. There's also the question of whether the players even want reunification anymore. Many PGA Tour players are happy with their equity stakes and increased purses. Many LIV players are happy with their guaranteed contracts and reduced schedules. The animosity from 2022 and 2023 has cooled somewhat, but it hasn't disappeared. McIlroy said, "I'm way more comfortable being on the PGA Tour side than on their side, but who knows what'll happen," expressing a sentiment that a lot of players on both sides probably feel. They've picked their teams, adjusted to the new reality. Why go through the pain of reunification? DeChambeau seemed to suggest that time itself is the only solution. He said, "I think there will be improvements for the game as time goes on. It's positive disruption, and it'll take time to let the water settle and make a perfect scenario where we all come back together. Ultimately, I think it'll be good for the game over time." Notice the phrasing there, over time. Not next year, not in the immediate future, just eventually maybe if the water settles. That's not optimism. That's resignation dressed up as hope. The PGA Tour appears to have weathered the storm LIV created, particularly with players like Scottie Scheffler becoming golf's most prolific winner since Tiger Woods. LIV Golf's momentum has stalled, and the days of luring superstars from the PGA Tour appear to be done. But if LIV loses stars like Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, or Jon Rahm when their contracts expire, they would find themselves in real trouble. That's the nuclear scenario that could force change. If LIV's top players decide the guaranteed money isn't worth missing out on the history and prestige of the PGA Tour, and they negotiate returns, then LIV might finally have to accept terms it doesn't want to accept. But there's no indication that's happening. Those contracts aren't up yet, and when they are, the Saudis will presumably just offer more money. Which brings us back to where we started. Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau, two players on opposite sides of golf's divide, both saying the same thing in late November 2024. This deal isn't happening, not because it's impossible in theory, but because both sides have found ways to exist without each other, and the compromises required are too painful for either to accept. The framework agreement signed on the 30th of May 2023 was supposed to be the beginning of reunification. Instead, it might end up being remembered as the moment everyone realized reunification was impossible. Professional golf is fractured, probably permanently. The major championships will continue to bring everyone together 4 times a year. The PGA Tour will continue as the establishment with its history and player equity. LIV Golf will continue as the disruptor with infinite Saudi money, and everyone will just learn to live with it. McIlroy said it's very difficult for there to be unification given what's happened over the last few years. DeChambeau said both sides are too far apart on too many things. These aren't statements made by people who believe a deal is around the corner. These are statements made by people who've accepted that sometimes wars don't end with peace treaties, they just end with exhaustion and an agreement to stay separated. The great golf reunification of 2023 never happened. And if the sport's biggest stars are right, it never will.